How to Forgive Without Reopening Old Wounds. Lesson from the Duke and Duchess of London. In the pages that follow, you will encounter a story of love tested, broken, and carefully rebuilt. This is not a tale of grand gestures or magical reconciliation, but rather an honest exploration of how two people navigate the difficult path of forgiveness after profound hurt. Through the experiences of Eleanor and William Ashworth, Duke and Duchess of London, you will discover several truths about the nature of forgiveness in relationships. You will learn that forgiveness is not the same as forgetting, and that healing does not require erasing the past. You will see how vague expressions of hurt must be transformed into specific communications about what harm was done and what repair might look like. You will witness how trust is rebuilt not through dramatic gestures, but through consistent small actions over time. This story will show you that both parties in a relationship must be willing to be vulnerable, to speak difficult truths, and to acknowledge their own roles in the patterns that cause pain. You will learn that self-forgiveness is as essential as forgiving another, and that healing is a process rather than a single event. Most importantly, you will see that choosing hope after hurt requires courage, that stumbling is part of the journey, and that grace for imperfection must flow in both directions. The morning light filtered through the heavy curtains of the Grosvenor Square townhouse as Eleanor Ashworth sat at her writing desk. Her pen moved across the paper with practiced efficiency, accepting invitations, declining others, maintaining the careful facade of a duchess in perfect control. The silver inkwell beside her had been a wedding gift 7 years ago, back when everything seemed full of promise. The door opened without ceremony. William entered, tall and composed, in his morning coat, carrying estate documents. His dark hair was already touched with silver at the temples, though he was only 32. Eleanor, he said. His voice was polite, distant. The voice was might use with a respected business associate. I require your signature on these household accounts. She did not look up. Leave them on the side table. I shall attend to them this afternoon. There is also the matter of Charlotte's engagement. At this Eleanor's pen paused. She has requested that we host the wedding at Ashworth Park. She was quite insistent. A long silence stretched between them. Ashworth Park, 6 weeks in the country, 6 weeks in that house with its memories, its empty nursery, its echoes of who they had been before everything fell apart. When? Eleanor asked, her voice carefully controlled. We would need to depart within the week. Charlotte wishes to marry in June. Eleanor rose from her desk, smoothing her skirts with trembling hands. She hoped she would not notice. Then I shall make the necessary arrangements. William took a step forward, then stopped himself. Eleanor, I know this will be a difficult. For the first time, she met his eyes directly, those blue eyes that had once looked at her with such warmth, such love. Now they held only careful politeness and something that might have been regret. Everything is difficult, William. We have simply become accustomed to it. He opened his mouth as if he to speak, then thought better of it. The words died unspoken, as so many words had between them. He bowed slightly, formally, as though she were a stranger rather than the woman who bore his name, and left the room. Eleanor returned to her desk, but her hands trembled too much to write. She remembered Ashworth Park as it had been the laughter in those halls, the plans they made they had made together, the nursery they had prepared with such hope, and then the emptiness that followed, the silence that had grown between them, like a living thing, feeding on unspoken grief until it consumed everything else. 3 days later, they sat across from each other in their travelling carriage. William pretended to read correspondence, though Eleanor noticed he had been staring at the same page for 20 minutes. She looked out the window at the passing countryside. The weather has been favorable for travel, William offered after an hour of silence. Indeed, another mile passed in silence. Finally, William sat down his papers. Eleanor, must we be strangers for 6 entire weeks? She turned from the window, her expression carefully neutral. We have been stranger for 3 years, William. 6 weeks will make little difference. It was not always so. No, Eleanor said softly. It was not. William leaned forward, earnest now in a way we had not been in years. I know I have failed you. I know that I withdrew when you needed me most. But must we live the remainder of our life in this cold politeness? Is there no path back to even friendship? Eleanor felt her composure crack slightly. You speak of 3 years ago as if it were a simple misunderstanding, as if you did not dismiss my grief as an inconvenience, as if you did not disappear into your work and leave me utterly alone in the darkest moment of my life. I did not know how to help you. William said quietly, his voice breaking. I was drowning in my own grief. I felt like I was failing in every way that mattered, and I did not know how to keep myself together and hold you up at the same time. Then we drowned separately, Eleanor replied, and her eyes bright with unshed tears. And I learned not to reach for you. That is not a lesson easily unlearned, William. The carriage fell silent again, heavy with years of unspoken pain, when they stopped for the night at a coaching inn. Eleanor requested separate rooms without looking at him. Ashford Park rose before them like a monument to happier times. The stone facade glowed warm in the afternoon sun. Eleanor stood in the entrance hall and felt the weight of memory pressing against her ribs. Every room held ghosts. The library where William had read to her in the evenings, the music room where she had played while he listened, the morning room where they had taken breakfast together, making plans for the day ahead. She found the nursery by accident, or perhaps by instinct. She had not meant to walk this direction, had told herself she would avoid this corridor entirely, but her feet carried her nonetheless. Inside, everything remained as it had been, the murals she had commissioned, pastoral scenes of children playing in meadows, the cradle William had carved himself during those hopeful months, the rocking chair where she had sat so many times, hands on her belly, singing soft songs to life growing within her. Eleanor sank into the rocking chair and allowed herself finally to weep, great shaking sobs that she had held back for 3 years. She wept for the child who never drew breath. She wept for the marriage that had crumbled under the weight of unprocessed grief. She wept for the woman she had been, full of hope and dreams, and the hollow version of herself she had become. William found her there an hour later. He had been searching for her, growing concerned when she did not appear for tea. He stood in the doorway watching his wife cry alone in the room meant for a child who never drew breath. He wanted to go to her, to told her, to somehow absorb her pain, but he had lost that right. He had left her alone when it mattered most. So he simply stood there, bearing witness to her grief, because it was the only thing he could offer. After a long moment, Eleanor looked up and saw him. Their eyes met across the room, and for the first time in 3 years they did not look away. They simply looked at each other. Two people who had loved each other once, who had built dreams together, who had lost everything, and did not know how to find their way back. William left without speaking. There were no words adequate to the moment. That evening Charlotte arrived with her betrothed, Richard Hartwell. She was radiant with happiness. Bubbling over with plans, over dinner she chattered about flowers and music and guest lists. "And when might I expect nieces and nephews to spoil?" Charlotte asked brightly. "Surely after 7 years of marriage, you might provide me with some." The silence that fell was immediate and terrible. Eleanor's fork clattered against her plate. She stood abruptly. "Please excuse me. I find I have a headache." She left the dining room quickly. Charlotte looked stricken. "Oh dear, I have said something wrong." "It is not your fault," William said quietly. "Please excuse me." He found Eleanor in the garden, standing among the roses in the fading light. She stood very still, her arms wrapped around herself. "Eleanor, please wait." She turned on him, and months of contained fury suddenly unleashed. "Do not speak to me of children. Do not speak to me of the future. You have no right, William. You forfeited that right when you left me alone with my grief." "I know you are correct in your anger. I failed you utterly. There is no defense for what I did. You dismissed my pain as if it were inconvenience to your schedule. You retreated into your precious parliamentary duties, and left me to grieve alone. You made me feel that my feelings were excessive, that I should simply move on. Do you have any idea what that did to me?" "I did not know how to hold both my grief and yours," William said, his voice breaking. "I thought if I acknowledged how much it destroyed me, I would crumble entirely, and who would hold the family together then? So I buried everything and kept moving forward, because that was the only way I knew how to survive." "So you left me to crumble alone," Eleanor said, tears streaming down her face. "You saved yourself and let me drown." "Yes," William said, his own eyes wet now. "God forgive me. Yes, I was coward. I could not face the pain, so I ran from it, and in running from my own pain, I abandoned you in yours. It is the greatest failure of my life." Eleanor stared at him. "At least you admit it." "I love your child, Eleanor. Every day of your pregnancy, I loved that child, and when we lost it, something in me broke. But instead of grieving with you, I pretended I could be strong enough for both of us. I was devastatingly wrong." "Then you should have shown me," Eleanor whispered. "You should have cried with me. You should have held me. You should have stayed." They stood in the darkness of the garden, 3 years of silence between them, and said nothing more. Finally, William turned and walked back to the house, alone. The next morning Eleanor walked to the Dower house, where William's grandmother resided. The Dowager Duchess Margaret was embroidering by the window when Eleanor arrived. "You look as though you have been crying, my dear. Come, sit. I shall ring for tea." Eleanor sank into a chair. "I do not know how to forgive him, grandmother." The Dowager set down her needlework. "Has he apologized?" "He has tried, but his words feel empty, because nothing changes. We have the same conversations, the same careful distance." "Have you told him what you need in order to forgive?" Eleanor paused. Should he not simply know? Should a husband not understand that his wife needs without being told? The dowager smiled sadly. My dear child, no one can read another's heart, no matter how much they love them. You are both standing in the ruins of what was, each waiting for the other to rebuild. But you must tell him what the new foundation should look like. He cannot build to your specifications if he does not know what they are. I do not know how to speak of it without the anger returning. Then speak from the anger. Better honest anger than polite silence. When my late husband betrayed my trust 40 years ago, I nearly left him. I chose to stay only after I made clear what I needed for our marriage to continue. What did you need? Complete honesty, no matter how uncomfortable, weekly conversations about our feelings, scheduled and protected. His presence at every important moment, not just the convenient ones. These were my terms for forgiveness. I wrote them in a letter because I could not speak them without weeping or shouting. And he agreed. He honored them until the day he died 30 years later. But I had to speak them first, Eleanor. He could not know what I needed if I did not tell him. But what if I tell him and he fails again? The dowager reached across and took Eleanor's hand. Then at least you will know you tried. And, my dear, you are already disappointed, already hurt. Speaking your truth cannot make things worse than they already are. That night, Eleanor sat at her writing desk. Her hand shook as she tipped her quill. William, you hurt me deeply when our child was lost, not only with your absence, but with your silence. You made me feel that my grief was excessive, that I should simply move forward, as you seemed able to do. You prioritized your work over my heart. You withdrew physically and emotionally, and I felt abandoned in the darkest moment of my life. I wept alone night after night while you slept in your separate chamber. If we are to find our way forward, I need specific things from you. I need daily conversations, even if brief. I need permission to speak about our loss without you shutting down or changing the subject. I need your presence, not merely your provision. I need to know that when difficulty comes again, you will not disappear into your work. I need your consistency, not grand gestures. I need to see change sustained over time. But I must also confess my own failing. I built walls to protect myself. I did not tell you clearly what I needed. I expected you to know, and when you did not, I used my anger as armor. I have not been kind to you either. I have punished you with my silence as surely as you punished me with your absence. We cannot return to who we were. Those people no longer exist, but perhaps we can build something new. I am willing to try if you are, but I will not settle for empty promises. I need action, consistency, proof over time that things will truly be different. Eleanor. She sealed the letter and slipped it under his door before she could reconsider. William read the letter 3 times in the darkness. For the first time, he understood not just that he had hurt her, but precisely how. She had laid out exactly what she needed, not vague requests, but concrete actions he could take. But it was her admission of her own role that struck him most deeply. She acknowledged her walls, her unexpressed expectations, her use of anger as protection. She was offering not just demands but partnerships. The next morning he found Eleanor at breakfast. She looked startled to him. They had not breakfasted together in 3 years. May I sit with you? He asked. She nodded, wary. I read your letter. Thank you for your honesty. It could not have been easy to write. No, It was not easy. I should like to join you for breakfast each morning, if you will permit it, not to discuss anything weighty, simply to be present with you at the start of each day. She searched his face for signs of empty promises. Very well. They ate in silence for several minutes. Eleanor expected him to fill the quiet with talk, with plans, but he simply ate his breakfast and occasionally glanced at her, as if checking that she was real. Do you have plans for the day? He asked finally. I thought I might review the wedding preparations with Charlotte. Might I join you? I know I have a little eye for decorative matters, but I should like to be involved. And perhaps you might tell me honestly if my suggestions are terrible. Eleanor felt something crack in her chest, a small fissure in her walls. You may join us. The days that followed were awkward, tentative. William joined Eleanor for breakfast daily. He asked about her plans and actually listened. When estate matters arose, he sought her opinion before making decisions. Eleanor noticed these changes but remained guarded. Years of hurt did not dissolve in days. She watched him carefully, waiting for him to revert to old patterns. But he did not. Each morning he appeared at breakfast. Each day he consulted her. Each evening he asked about her day. One afternoon William found Eleanor in the garden. May I sit with you? They sat in silence for a full hour. William did not try to make conversation or fill the quiet. He simply sat beside her, present, not demanding anything. When Eleanor finally rose to leave, something had shifted. She had allowed him into her space, and he had not tried to fix or change anything. He had simply been there. That night at dinner, William mentioned that he had written to colleagues in Parliament explaining he would be absent for the full 6 weeks. Eleanor looked up sharply. You have done what? I am here for Charlotte's wedding, but more importantly, I am here to rebuild my marriage if you will allow it. Parliamentary business can wait. You cannot. One evening Eleanor sat in the SC chapel. William found her there. I blame myself, she said. I still do some days. I wonder what I did wrong. William sat beside her. You did nothing wrong. The physician said it clearly there was no cause. Nothing you could have prevented. You are not to blame. The elderly chaplain entered and approached quietly. Forgiveness of another is incomplete without forgiveness of self. He said gently, You both worry. You both carry guilt that is not yours to bear. How does one forgive oneself? Eleanor asked. You acknowledge the harm. You understand that you did the best you could with what you knew at that time. And you choose each day to release the guilt and move forward with wisdom gained from experience. A few days before the wedding, Charlotte observed them working together on the final guest list. You are different together now, she said. More real somehow, less like the perfect porcelain couple and more like actual people who care for each other. We have been working to repair what was broken, William said. How did you find your way back? Eleanor spoke. We stopped pretending that hurt did not exist. We learned to speak of difficult things rather than hide from them. To say specifically what harm has done and specifically what we needed to going forward. And we gave each other grace to be imperfect in the healing, William added. To stumble, to have setbacks, progress is not linear. Most importantly, Eleanor said we chose each other anew each day, not out of obligation but because we decided our marriage was worth fighting for. Charlotte's eyes were bright. Thank you for telling me this. Everyone speaks of marriage as though love is enough, but that is not real, is it? No, Eleanor said. Love is essential, but it's not enough by itself. Marriage requires communication, vulnerability, commitment to growth. and willingness to do the work to do the hard work of staying connected when it would be easier to drift apart. Charlotte's wedding day arrived with her perfect weather. The chapel was filled with flowers, sunlight streaming through stained glass windows. As Charlotte and Richard exchanged their vows, Eleanor and William sat together in the front row. When William reached for her hand, Eleanor took it without hesitation. The words watched over her with new meaning. To have and to hold for this day, forward for better, for worse, for richer, for poorer, in sickness and in health, to love and to cherish, till death do us apart. They had spoken similar words 7 years ago, young and hopeful, and utterly unprepared for what words actually meant. Now they understood, they knew what it cost to keep such promises, how easy it was to fail, how hard it was to find the way back. After the ceremony, Eleanor and William walked in the garden while guests gathered in the house. William stopped beneath an oak tree. Might we try again? Not immediately, but someday, family. Eleanor's expression was serious. I am afraid that fear has not disappeared, but I am no longer close to the possibility. Ask me again in 6 months, when we had more time to strengthen what we are rebuilding. William nodded, accepting her answers without pressure. I shall ask you again, and whatever your answer, I will be here, whether we are blessed with children or not, whether life is kind or cruel, I will be here beside you. Eleanor felt tears prick her eyes, different tears that she had shed in recent weeks, not tears of grief or anger, but something that might have been hope. The journey back to London felt entirely different. They sat close in the carriage now, William's arm along the seat behind her shoulders. They talked freely, discussing the wedding, their plans for the autumn season. I still have days when the anger returns, Eleanor admitted. When I remember how alone I felt when those days comes, will you tell me? Will you let me be there in anger with you rather than shutting me out? I will try. And when you feel overwhelmed, when the urge to retreat into work rises, will you tell me before you disappear? I will try. The winter season tested them. At a society gathering, Lady Pemberton said loudly, "The Duchess has been married 7 years now. One would think there would be an heir." Perhaps the Duke married defectively. Old Eleanor would have retreated to cry alone. Old William would have thrown himself into work. New Eleanor went to William's study that evening. That hurt me today, I know. I wanted to challenge her to pistols at dawn. Despite her pain, Eleanor felt a smile. Pistols at dawn? I am a crack shot. They both laughed, the absurdity cutting through the hurt, but William's expression grew serious. You are not less because we have no children yet. You are not defective. You are everything to me. I know that now, but hearing such things in public still stings. When such things happens, we will come home and speak of them together. Your hurt is my hurt. We share it now. Spring arrived 6 months after Charlotte's wedding. Eleanor and William walked in Hyde Park. As you again now, William said, taking both her hands. Shall we try? Eleanor looked into his eyes, those blue eyes that had learned to stay present in pain. Yes, I am still afraid, but I trust us now in a way I did not before. I trust that if grief comes again, you will be beside me in it, not running from it. And if we are not blessed with children, I want you to know, truly know, that you are enough. Our marriage is enough. I know, Eleanor said, and she did. She felt it in her bones now, the truth of his commitment. 1 year later, the family gathered at Ashford Park for the christening of Charlotte's daughter. The nursery had been repainted in soft yellows and greens. Eleanor was 6 months pregnant. After the ceremony, William and Eleanor walked in the garden as the sun set. They had walked this path so many times. Now the place where had argued bitterly, the oak tree, where they had sat in healing silence. I would not have been chosen the path we walked. Eleanor said, her hand resting on her belly. The losses, the pain, the years of distance. Nor would I. But I'm grateful for where it was brought us. We are not who we are 7 years ago when we married. No, William agreed. We are better. We are real. We have looked at the worst of ourselves and each other and chosen to stay, to fight, to build something stronger from the broken pieces. They had learned that love required tending, not just feeling. That wounds could heal without being forgotten. That forgiveness was a daily choice, not a single moment. That trust once broken could be rebuilt stronger than before through consistent action over time. That the greatest strength was mutual. Vulnerability, the courage to be honest even when honesty was painful. Tomorrow would bring us its own challenges. There would be setbacks and struggles, moments of doubt and fear. Life offered no guarantees. But they would face whatever came together. Two people who had learned to weather storms side by side rather than alone. Thank you for giving us another chance, William said. Thank you for being worthy of it. The stars emerged one by one above them, and for the first time in years, Eleanor looked at them and felt not grief for what had been lost, but hope for what might yet come, not naive, hope that ignored possibility of pain, but mature hope that acknowledged risk and chose courage anyway. This was forgiveness, not forgetting, not erasing, but choosing. Choosing each other, choosing hope, choosing to build a future that honored the past without being imprisoned by it. And it was enough.